Good afternoon, welcome to NMS. I'm going to talk to you today about micro training, and just to give you an idea of what micro training, it's basically just hitting very short workouts of maybe 5, 10, up to 15-minute durations, and it's sort of a way of fitting in some of your workouts in between maybe a busy lifestyle. Okay. Now, low volume HIIT training has huge benefits. A meta-analysis of low volume, high intensity interval training of 5 minutes work in 15 minutes, in other words, a 15-minute workout with 5 minutes of actual work time, gives huge improvements in both cardiovascular, cardiorespiratory, blood pressure, body composition, compared to basically doing nothing. In other words, doing something is better than doing nothing. These low volume HIIT protocols have less total exercise than any moderate intensity continuous training or high volume HIIT, but the gains were comparable in many metrics. Not all though, and that's important. So micro workouts throughout. So a systemic review of a meta-analysis, 27 studies, showed that basically out of the 970 participants looking at short bursts of activity several times a day found VO2 max, reduced waist circumference, reduced blood pressure improvements, and improved fasting glucose and lipids. In other words, people were losing body fat, were dropping their blood pressure and getting improvements in overall fitness. Another study called Micro Workout, a paradigm shift, showed that even smaller bouts of vigorous intense activity of 1 to 2 minutes several times a day was associated with large reductions in mortality risk compared to no activity. That's the important part, compared to no activity. So something is better than nothing. So fat loss and body composition. Interval training, HIIT versus sit, was continuous moderate intensity training. Meta-analysis found both reduced body fat, but HIIT often does so in less time with similar results. Okay, so you can do these micro workouts and may actually get better result or similar results as you do with just moderate intensity but prolonged workouts. Micro workouts also show modest reductions in body fat percentage and waist circumference. What about strength and performance gains? Well, in younger populations, HIIT protocols over an 8+ week period showed substantial improvements in strength, speed, and aerobic and anaerobic metrics. Okay, although micro workouts might be less effective for building muscle size compared to high volume strength training, some studies show even short strength sessions or micro bouts, can increase strength in untrained or lightly trained individuals. In other words, guys, like if you're not training at all, some training is better than nothing. Okay, so let's look at some limitations. First of all, the intensity's got to be high. So the less the volume, the greater the HIIT is needed, especially in micro workouts. If the intensity is too low, then some of the major benefits may be missed. So you have to train hard and you have to push yourself. So total volume and frequency still matter. The shorter the workouts, the greater the frequency. A one-off micro workout won't replace consistent training. Okay, so obviously this is something that you've sort of got to look at and go, got a busy period, I'm going to do these micro workouts when I can. In some studies, longer cumulative high intensity work or more repetitions corresponded to greater gains. Okay, so obviously, longer duration workouts are important, but if you can't do them, you look for something that does work. The outcomes may not match moderate volume workouts of longer duration for overall fat loss or endurance. So longer workouts may sometimes match or exceed short intense workouts, especially when dietary control is considered. Okay, so strength and hypertrophy tends to benefit more from volume, load, and rest. Okay, so micro workouts of a greater intensity means more risk and recovery and more overall stress on the body. So the risk of injury, overtraining may rise if not managed well. In other words, if you're doing lots and lots of these workouts and maybe you think, oh yeah, I'm going to do 5 or 6 workouts a day of 15-minute bursts, you're probably going to overtrain yourself when the intensity is quite high. Okay, so short bursts work if they are highly motivated, but may not be sustainable over months or years. The reason for this, guys, is obviously that if you've got to take yourself from 0 to working ridiculously hard, It's very hard to work into the intensity of the workout, and people may sometimes look at it and think, well, the amount of work that I've got to do probably doesn't match, okay, what the results might be. So maybe people would prefer to maybe do their 4 workouts of moderate intensity, but obviously, longer workouts, than, seeing these workouts and going, okay, man, I've got to just push myself now, So mental fatigue, boredom, or simply just life disruptions can actually affect adherence. So some people actually prefer longer sessions for enjoyment. I'm certainly one that likes to go into a workout, get into my workout. I like to get the workout done, but I certainly like to actually, take my time warming up and getting into the intensity of it. So what's the summary of this, guys? Okay, the long-term outcomes beyond a few months aren't clear, and obviously because the studies are not there to show long-term outcomes, but this would be really something that they need to do. Older adults with chronic diseases and injuries may not cope, okay, but nor would beginners, okay, so obviously this sort of is something for intermediate to advanced people who really want to get their workouts in, but find it very difficult to actually get the workout done. The dose is important, so intensity versus rest versus volume for different goals. Risk of injuries with repeated high intensity short bursts. Now, the problems I see with this, guys, based on my experience with this is, first of all, warming up is important. So if you're doing short bursts of work, obviously it's going to be very difficult to warm up, get into the bursts of workout, and then obviously, you're doing it for very short workouts. So, it's really difficult to do this several times a day. The other thing too is that, just feeling like you have to push yourself really hard and really fast, sometimes people just don't enjoy it, okay? So I have seen people try, and trainers especially, try to push shorter, sharper workouts. People don't enjoy it. People actually like the fact that, especially when it comes to a personal training session, they actually want to talk to their personal trainer in between doing their work sets, okay? The other thing too is that you got to remember that for maximum results, you need, at least probably 2 to 3 minutes rest in between sets to get the maximum out of every set. So if you're doing these short, sharp bursts, it's obviously going to lend itself to less of a rest period. So your actual work output, like the amount of actually load that you're putting on the muscle, is going to be reduced because you're just pushing yourself lots and lots of fast sets. So personally for me, guys, if you've got a very short period of time to actually train, these would be great, okay? But don't always do them, okay? Do it because you want to get the workout in, but don't do them because you think, oh, I'm just going to do this all the time, okay? Unlike what we were talking about the other day with zero intensity training or zone 0, okay, this requires that you go from 0 to 10 in a hurry, and sometimes the mental capacity to hit that high intensity very fast isn't with some people. Think about how you would do this, guys. If you want to try it, by all means try it. I know that some people that I work with don't like it and certainly wouldn't fall for it, and they prefer the longer workouts of, maybe less frequency, but longer duration. Thanks for listening, guys. Like, comment, share, subscribe, but definitely talk about this video because I want people to go and give me their input on these micro workouts. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time.